Kardan had always seen her Uncle Jordan as a constant in her life, steady, warm, the kind of man whose presence filled a room without effort. Since she was a little girl, his laughter had been her comfort, his voice the one that could calm storms. He wasn't just her mother's brother by adoption. He was the quiet hero who had shown up at every school play, every heartbreak, every milestone. But now, at 20, something about the way she looked at him had changed, or maybe the way he looked at her. There was a new awareness in the air, subtle but electric. Kardan noticed it first in small things. How his hand brushed hers when passing a plate, how his eyes lingered just a heartbeat longer than before. It wasn't inappropriate. Not yet, just something unspoken, something hovering between them that neither could name, and it made her heart race in ways she didn't understand. Jordan, on the other hand, tried to pretend nothing had shifted. He told himself she was still the same little girl who used to fall asleep on his shoulder during family movies. But even he couldn't ignore how her laughter had deepened, or how her presence stirred something long buried inside him, something he thought he'd forgotten how to feel. There were evenings when the two of them would sit out on the porch, the sun melting into the horizon, talking about everything and nothing. Kardan would tell him about her classes, her plans, the dreams she didn't share with anyone else. Jordan listened with quiet pride, admiring her sharp mind and the spark in her eyes. Yet, behind his easy smile, there was a growing ache, the awareness that she wasn't a child anymore. And that realization came with a strange, uninvited tenderness. Kardan felt it too, though she couldn't admit it, not even to herself. When he laughed, her chest warmed. When he praised her, her pulse quickened. It was confusing, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. She told herself it was just admiration, gratitude even. But late at night, when she replayed their conversations in her head, she knew it was something more, something she shouldn't feel. And Jordan, alone in his house after she left, often caught himself thinking about her smile, her scent of vanilla and rain. It unsettled him, that rush of longing that came with her memory. He'd stare at the ceiling, forcing himself to remember boundaries, the invisible line that separated what was right from what was forbidden. But the more he tried to resist, the more that line began to blur. Movements, the ease in his smile when he noticed her. Something fluttered in her chest, an unfamiliar mix of warmth and guilt. She told herself she was only admiring him the way one admires a painting, distant, harmless. But deep down, she knew it wasn't so simple anymore. They spent the afternoon together, laughter floating between them like music. Yet beneath it all, the tension pulsed quietly, a rhythm only they could hear. When their eyes met, there was a flicker of something raw, something neither dared to name. Kardan looked away first, pretending to be distracted by the flowers, while Jordan cleared his throat and tried to steady his breath. It was a silent dance, filled with restraint and longing. That evening, as Kardan walked home, the air felt heavier somehow. The world looked the same, yet everything inside her had shifted. She couldn't stop thinking about him, about the warmth of his voice, the way he had looked at her, almost as if he saw her for the first time. And though she didn't know what it meant, she could feel something awakening, a spark that would soon be impossible to ignore. Summer arrived like a soft whisper, and with it came a sense of freedom. Kardan decided to spend a few weeks at Jordan's house while her mother traveled, something they'd both agreed to easily, though deep down, both knew it meant temptation in disguise. His home sat at the edge of town, wrapped in quiet and sunlight, a place where time seemed to move slower, and in that stillness, emotions had room to grow, wild and untamed. Their days began gently, with morning coffee and laughter echoing through the kitchen. Kardan loved the peaceful rhythm, the way he moved about the house, calm, confident, unaware of how much she noticed him now. Sometimes she'd catch herself studying the lines on his face, the silver strands in his hair, the quiet strength in the way he spoke. Every detail drew her closer, like waves pulled toward the shore. Jordan, though he tried to act the same, could feel the air thickening between them. The sight of her barefoot in the hallway, humming softly as she made breakfast, stirred something deep inside him, something he tried to smother beneath the weight of reason. But reason was a fragile thing in the face of her laughter, her kindness, her presence. And every day that fragile wall began to crack. One rainy afternoon, the sky opened up without warning. The world outside turned gray, and the sound of thunder rolled through the hills. Kardan was sitting by the window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. Jordan joined her, a mug of tea in hand, his voice low and steady as he spoke about simple things, the weather, his garden, the kind of small talk that tried to hide what both of them were feeling. But silence kept slipping in, long and heavy, carrying with it the things they dared not say. Kardan turned to him, her eyes soft, almost searching. "You've always taken care of me," she said quietly. Jordan smiled, but something in him tightened. That smile didn't reach his eyes, not because of pain, but because of how much he wished he could say what he shouldn't. Her gaze lingered on him, just a second too long, and in that moment, the storm outside wasn't half as loud as the one inside them both. When lightning cracked across the sky, she flinched, and without thinking, Jordan placed a hand on her shoulder. It was meant to comfort, nothing more, but the warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her. Neither of them moved. For a few suspended seconds, the world stopped. No words, no rules, just a heartbeat, shared between two people who suddenly realized they'd crossed into dangerous ground. That night, the house felt impossibly quiet. Kardan couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts looping back to that single touch, how it had lingered on her skin like a secret. The rain had stopped, but its memory clung to the air, heavy and damp. She got up, pacing softly across the wooden floor, trying to shake the feeling that something inside her had just changed forever. In the next room, Jordan sat awake too. He'd poured himself a drink, though it didn't calm him. He replayed the afternoon over and over, the warmth of her shoulder beneath his palm, the way she'd looked at him with that mix of trust and something else. He felt guilty, torn, but also alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. It terrified him. He told himself it was just the storm, just emotion stirred by old memories, but deep down, he knew better. When their eyes met at breakfast the next morning, neither spoke of it, yet something unspoken lingered in the air, a gentle spark that had taken root. Every movement, every glance, every word felt charged now. The barrier between them was thinning, thread by thread, and somewhere inside, both knew that the next moment of weakness might be the one that would change everything. The days that followed felt different, quieter, heavier, as if every breath carried the weight of what hadn't been said. Kardan found herself watching Jordan when she thought he wasn't looking, memorizing the curve of his smile, the patience in his voice, the way his hands moved when he spoke. Each small detail felt intimate, almost sacred. But along with the warmth came fear of what she was beginning to want and the line she might be about to cross. Jordan noticed her silence. She wasn't the same carefree girl who used to tease him about his taste in music or his messy desk. Now, there was a maturity in her eyes that both unsettled and fascinated him. He caught himself thinking about her too often. In the car, at work, in the middle of the night. It was wrong, he reminded himself. It had to stop. But the heart rarely listens to logic once desire starts whispering. One evening, as he worked in his study, Kardan appeared at the door. Her voice was soft when she spoke his name, and he looked up, startled, breath caught in his throat. She hesitated, standing there like someone about to step off the edge of something vast. There was vulnerability in her eyes, but also courage. Jordan's pulse quickened. He knew, in that instant, that whatever happened next would change them forever. Kardan walked into the room, her steps slow, almost uncertain. The air felt thick, charged with something neither of them dared to name. She stopped just a few feet away from him, and for a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them said everything words could not. Years of closeness, trust, and something deeper that had quietly evolved into longing. Her voice trembled as she finally broke it. "I can't keep pretending nothing's changed," she said. Her honesty hung in the air, fragile and raw. Jordan rose from his chair, his heart pounding. He wanted to deny it, to protect her, to protect them both, but the look in her eyes made that impossible. It wasn't just a fleeting crush. It was real, complex, impossible to undo. "Kardan," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't understand what this means." But she did. She understood more than he realized. She took a hesitant step closer, the space between them shrinking to a breath. The moment was suspended, the kind of stillness that comes before everything breaks. He could feel her heartbeat, see the shimmer of tears she tried to hold back. "I do understand," she whispered, and that was all it took. His resistance faltered, crushed beneath the weight of what they'd both been denying. The truth had finally escaped the cage they'd built around it. When he reached for her, it wasn't planned. It was instinct, a trembling, desperate act born from too many moments left unspoken. Kardan didn't pull away. Instead, she closed her eyes, feeling his touch settle against her cheek, like something both forbidden and inevitable. The world seemed to fade, no sound, no time, just the pulse of two hearts colliding in the quiet. For years, they'd danced around the edge of this feeling, and now they were finally falling into it. Jordan hesitated for just a heartbeat, his mind screaming reason while his soul begged for mercy. He'd spent a lifetime being the protector, the steady hand, the safe place. But now, as her fingers brushed his face, he felt that resolve unravel. All he could think of was how right it felt, how terrifyingly human it was to want her this much. The kiss that followed wasn't wild, it was slow, trembling, full of years of restraint finally breaking. When morning came, sunlight crept through the curtains, warm and merciless. Reality returned like a cold tide, and neither of them could look away from what had happened. The air was thick with silence, guilt mingling with something far more powerful, love that refused to hide. They didn't speak, they didn't need to. The line had been crossed, and now, every choice ahead would carry the weight of that night. The days after were a blur of stolen glances and quiet fear. Kardan and Jordan moved through the house as if it had grown smaller overnight. Every hallway, every room echoing with the memory of what they'd shared. They tried to act normal, but the air between them betrayed the truth. Even simple things, passing a cup, brushing shoulders, carried an electric weight that neither could hide. What once felt safe now pulsed with danger. At family gatherings, the tension became unbearable. Jordan would catch her eye across the room, and time would stop, 1,000 memories flashing in a single heartbeat. She'd force a smile, pretending nothing had changed, while her chest tightened with the secret they carried. Every hug, every laugh from others felt like a test, daring them to slip, to reveal, and yet, beneath the guilt, there was still that pull, that quiet ache that refused to fade. Late at night, Kardan lay awake, replaying everything in her mind. The sound of his voice, the warmth of his arms, they haunted her like a beautiful sin. She told herself to let go, to be strong, but the heart doesn't obey reason. It only remembers how it felt to be seen, completely and deeply. And for Jordan, she knew, that truth was tearing him apart just as much as it was breaking her. Jordan had always been a man of control, calm under pressure, steady in every storm. But now, even he couldn't steady the whirlwind inside him. Every time he looked at Kardan, the guilt struck sharp, but love struck deeper. He tried to build distance. Longer work hours, fewer shared meals, small excuses to stay away. Yet, the emptiness that followed each avoidance only reminded him how much he'd already surrendered to her. He wasn't sure where duty ended and desire began anymore. Kardan noticed the change, and it hurt more than she expected. The laughter they once shared was replaced by silence, the warmth by hesitation. She tried to act like it didn't matter, to bury her feelings beneath routine, but love isn't something you can hide behind polite smiles. Every small rejection cut deeper, and when she saw him pretending, as if none of it had happened, something inside her cracked, not from anger, but from the ache of being forgotten by someone who meant everything. One evening, she found him on the porch, staring into the distance. "You can't keep running from me," she said softly. Her voice trembled, but her eyes held steady. Jordan turned to her, every emotion he'd tried to bury flickering across his face. Love, fear, guilt, longing. "I'm trying to protect you," he said, but she shook her head, stepping closer. "Then why does it feel like you're breaking me instead?" Her words hung in the air, trembling between confession and confrontation. The night deepened around them, heavy with unshed words. Jordan's eyes softened, and for the first time in days, he let the mask fall. "You don't know how much I think about you," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "Every second, I'm torn between what's right and what I feel." Kardan's breath caught. Hearing him say it out loud made it both real and unbearable. She wanted to reach for him, to close the distance, but something in his trembling restraint stopped her. The world beyond the porch was silent, save for the rustle of wind through the trees. It was strange how love could feel so right in one heartbeat, and so impossible in the next. Kardan turned away, blinking back tears, but Jordan stepped closer, not to touch her, just to be near. "You've changed everything," he murmured. His words felt like both a blessing and a curse, because in truth, they both knew there was no going back. Inside, the faint light of the living room flickered, casting shadows that seemed to mirror their hearts. Caught between what they wanted and what they feared, Kardan's chest tightened. This love, however wrong, had awakened something she could never unfeel, and though she didn't know it yet, the storm they were trying to contain was only just beginning. Days turned into weeks, and the secret became too heavy to carry. Every glance between Kardan and Jordan felt like a risk, every word weighed down by what might be discovered. Her mother's laughter at dinner, the innocence in her questions, all of it twisted the knife a little deeper. Guilt pressed against love like two opposing tides, neither strong enough to wash the other away. Something had to give, and soon it would. Jordan had grown quieter, more distant. He'd built walls around himself again, walls that Kardan could feel but not break. Each time he looked at her, there was a flicker of everything they'd shared, longing, regret, and a quiet desperation that words couldn't capture. He knew the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. Secrets like theirs had a way of finding light, no matter how deep they were buried. One afternoon, Kardan found him sitting by the window, the light catching the gray in his hair. "Are we pretending it never happened?" she asked softly. Jordan didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened, his eyes distant, lost somewhere between memory and duty. "If we keep going," he said finally, "we'll lose everything." She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "Then what are we living for, Jordan, if not for what feels real?" Jordan closed his eyes, and for a long moment, the room was still. He wanted to tell her that she was right, that every word she spoke had cut straight to the truth, but his heart was a battlefield, torn between love and the life he'd sworn to protect. "You deserve a future untouched by this," he whispered, voice heavy with resignation. Yet, even as he said it, he knew it was a lie, because he couldn't imagine a future that didn't have her in it. Kardan's tears came silently, slipping down her cheeks in the fading light. "You're not protecting me," she said, her voice trembling but sure. "You're just afraid of being seen, of being judged. But love isn't something to be ashamed of." Her words hit him like a storm, raw and unfiltered. He turned to her, his expression torn open, no longer hiding behind reason or restraint. In her eyes, he saw the truth he'd been running from, that their love, however wrong in the world's eyes, was the most honest thing he'd ever known. The silence that followed was thick with choice, the kind that changes lives. Outside, dusk had swallowed the horizon, the first stars flickering like fragile hope. Jordan reached out, his hand hovering in the air, inches from hers. It wasn't an invitation or a goodbye, just a moment suspended between two worlds, one built on duty, the other on love that refused to fade. Jordan's hand finally found hers, fingers trembling as they intertwined. It was such a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of everything they'd lived and lost. "If we choose this," he said quietly, "there's no turning back." Kardan met his gaze, calm now, steady. "There never was," she answered. In that instant, the noise of the world faded away, replaced by something pure, painful, and beautifully human. They weren't escaping judgment, they were walking straight into it, together. For a long time, they just stood there, holding each other in the dim light, knowing the world outside would never understand. And maybe it didn't need to, because love, in all its messy, imperfect glory, had already rewritten the rules they once lived by. Theirs was not a story of innocence lost, but of hearts awakened, flawed, defiant, and unafraid. Jordan exhaled, feeling the weight of fear slowly dissolve. What remained was truth, raw and irrevocable. When morning came, the house was bathed in gold. It didn't matter whether they would stay or part, whether the world would forgive them or not. What mattered was that they had faced the truth, the kind of truth that doesn't fade with time, only deepens. And as Kardan turned toward the window, sunlight warming her face, she realized that some loves aren't meant to be hidden, some are meant to burn, to change everything they touch.